An ordinary day is a blessing. Taking care of your surroundings, your people, your soul. Life is something that happens in front of our eyes, not in the back of our minds. Wouldn't that be revolutionary? We can feel alive again by removing the shields we raised to defend ourselves from life itself.
Hi, thanks for watching. In this tutorial I will show you two color grading methods. The first, using my powergrade. I just released it and you can find the link in the description. Then a free method, using already available resources inside the software. In either case, I suggest that you watch the entire tutorial, because even in the first part I will explain a lot that you can actually apply also in the second method, in the free version, making it more complex if you want more control over your look. Also, the initial settings will be the same. To begin, let's set our project correctly. Under File, Project Settings, Master Settings, I suggest working in a UHD timeline or 4K. Upscaling is usually a good way to go when uploading on YouTube or other social media. Under Color Management, set DaVinci YRGB as Color Science and DaVinci White Gamut Intermediate as Timeline Color Space. If you work on a DaVinci version later than the 2022, choose Rec 709 Scene as Output Color Space. If you are using an older version, select Rec 709A for Mac or Rec 709 Gamma 2.4 for Windows. Scrolling further down, under Lookup Tables, 3D Lookup Table Interpolation, select Tetrahedral. It's a more accurate way of applying your LUT. Just under here, click Open LUT folder. Then, to install my LUT and powergrade, go find the file named thefirstseed.cube. It's in the LUT folder of my powergrade. And then place it in DaVinci's LUT folder. Close the menu, click Update Lists, and then save. The LUT will now be available inside the software. To install the powergrade, inside the color page, on the top left corner, click on Gallery. Select powergrade, and then simply drag here the file named thefirstseed.drx. It is in my powergrades folder. Apply grade, and you have it. If you are using Mac, also ensure that you go under DaVinci Resolve, Preferences, General. The first two options should be toggled on. The starting point to use the powergrade is to properly set our camera profile. So, in the first node, Color Space Transform is applied. This will transform any profile you shot into DaVinci White Gamut Intermediate, the widest working space inside the software. So, open the Effects tab and select the correct profile based on your camera brand and shooting profile. Ensure that both tone mapping method and gamut mapping method are set to none. Otherwise, the CST will work as a LUT in a destructive way, meaning that values that go above or below maximum values on our scopes will be lost. Then, also use point adaptation should be unchecked. Now let's apply the LUT. It's a hybrid LUT, meaning there is both creative and technical. It's creative because it includes my artistic choices, the look that you can see in my short films. It's technical because it ensures that values stay within legal ranges in most cases. It was developed with the help of Tobia Montanari, Blackmagic Design certified trainer and professional colorist. For the free version of this tutorial, we will substitute it with the Kodak film print emulation already available inside the software. Now, to properly white balance our footage, let's apply saturation. We will then go into this compound node to see different saturation methods, which are the key to our look. Into the white balance node, you will find the chromatic adaptation. It's an effect that allows you to remap the image in a more accurate way, not only giving a general tint, but you have to know the color temperature that you shot in. If you know it, set it in the source illuminant, and then simply change the target illuminant, Kelvin and tint, until it makes sense for your eyes. Your current color space and gamma are DaVinci White Gamut and DaVinci Intermediate, as in our project settings. If you don't know which were the temperature and tint in your camera when you shot, then simply use the global wheel under the HDR wheels, or the temperature and tint sliders. A simple trick: if you double click on the names of the values near the sliders, it will automatically bring them to default. Under exposure, you can adjust the exposure of your image using the regular primaries color wheels. The offset works similarly to changing the ISO in camera while shooting, while the gain works on highlights. The gamma moves the midtones where your skin tones should be, while the lift works on the shadows. In my case, I usually lower the contrast and the pivot of the image, the midpoint, to make it more dense. Film look is compressed, and midtones should be a bit darker to make color behave like they do on film stock. You will also find a highlights node. Our LUTs curve compresses highlights, creating a very smooth roll-off to emulate film stock and avoid unpleasantly neat borders around clipped highlights. But in case you didn't clip and instead you want to recover texture in the brightest part of your image, for example clouds in the sky, you can activate this node. By default it's set to -35 because I think it's a sweet spot. Consider this: while going negative, it decreases luminosity, adding micro contrast and texture in your highlights, but at the same time it increases sharpening. On the contrary, if you increase it, you will make the highlights roll off even smoother, but you will also blur the image and lose micro contrast. So, don't go extreme with this. If you use it, you will also probably have to adjust the exposure a bit. It's a balance between different nodes that operate in similar areas. In the saturation compound node, you have 4 types of saturation. 2 of them are additive and 2 are subtractive saturation emulations that mimic the actual behavior of colors on film stock. By default, only color boost and RGB density are applied, and they may be enough. The third method should be activated if you want to further enrich your image and should be chosen alternatively between HSV saturation and HDR saturation. To explain better all of these methods, let's start from the first, the color boost. It operates in the standard additive way, meaning that it adds both saturation and brightness to the footage at the same time. It's typical of digital post-production, and I tend to be moderate with this. Specifically, the color boost saturates only the least saturated parts of the image, so if you increase it, it makes it more uniform. You can find the slider on the lower part of the primaries color wheels. By default, it is set to 8, but it can be adjusted according to your taste. RGB density instead works subtractively. It only lowers the brightness of colors, making them denser and thus similar to the film stock colors. You can customize the intensity of the node by either the RGB mixer, increasing or decreasing the green output, or changing the overall key output value under the key section. The limit is dictated by when artifacts show up, for example in the blurred colors in the background. It does something similar to what the color slice does, but I found that this is a cleaner method, less prone to artifacts. I found this method on Lift Gamma Gain, a fantastic forum that I strongly recommend if you are into color grading, and it was explained and posted by Roman Stribos. To create it from scratches, double click on the node, go to color space, select HSV, hue saturation value. Click on the first and the third channel, leaving only the second on, so you will work only on saturation. Then we have 2 additional saturation methods. Your image may be fine as it is right now, or you may want to push it further. So these two options have to be chosen alternatively, either one or the other. The first is the HSV saturation by Kull and Kelly. This method is again subtractive, so it decreases the brightness of colors, but this time it also adds saturation simultaneously. We select color space, HSV, we deselect the first and the third channel. You can dial the look from the primary color wheels. Moving the gamma works on the least saturated parts of the image, while the gain affects the most saturated ones. So I usually increase the gamma a bit and decrease the gain to balance my image. You can also adjust the overall output of this node from the key section under the key output. Again, the most satisfying techniques are also the most prone to artifacts, so be careful. In case the HSV saturation is too intense on your footage, deactivate it and activate the HDR saturation instead. This is a standard saturation method. It's additive. It increases luminance while also increasing saturation. It's applied from the HDR wheels and therefore it's color managed. It's more accurate. You can fine-tune it from the slider under the global wheel. Now that the main part of our look is built, we can go for the details. In the adjustment compound node, you can create your AI magic mask or a regular mask. Go under AI magic mask, choose better, select this option to actually see what's being selected, and then click on the parts of the image that you want to isolate. Then track them. After the tracking is complete, you can, for example, increase the contrast of your subject to make it stand out more. You can also invert the mask and work on the background instead, making it darker. For this clip, I think there's no need to have a mask. Under Hue, you can adjust the hue, saturation or luminance of specifically targeted colors. You can do it from the color curves. Here, for example, I wanted to saturate the sky and maybe decrease the luminosity of her skin a bit. You can also use the color slice, where for each color you can adjust hue, saturation and density, which basically is the opposite of luminosity. The more you increase density, the more you decrease luminosity. Let's work from here on the sky a bit more. So I will increase the density and the saturation. Just try both methods out, the color curves and the color slice, and see what works best for you. By default, the skin node will brighten up and desaturate your subject's skin. Use it if you want to add saturation to the overall image, or for example, to push your look in a different direction, adding a strong tint, while maintaining the skin natural. The key to any look is to always have skin tones balanced. Then there is the cool greens node. This node makes the greens temperature cooler, trying to replicate what the greens look on film stock. Whether to use it or not, it's your choice. In this specific case, I think the image is already cool enough. Another method for creatively stylizing your footage is introducing different casts on various areas. So for example, you can warm up your midtones and cool your shadows, moving the corresponding wheels in certain directions. You will increase split toning and color separation. The key output of this node is reduced in order for you to move more freely inside those wheels. Then we have the compound node dedicated to texture. First, we introduce some micro contrast. By default, it's set to a value that should adapt well to most cameras, but you can decide whether to increase it or decrease it. It depends on how sharp your sensor is. You can dial it from the mid-detail slider in the primary color wheels. Then we add some sharpening. It is set in a way that will only affect luminance, not the color values, not the chrominance. This way we obtain a cleaner sharpening that will not introduce color artifacts. It is created by selecting color space, lab CIE, and then leaving only the first channel active, the luminance. You can adjust it from the blur section under the radius column. It works inversely. You will increase the sharpening by decreasing the value, and vice versa. The grain is by default deactivated to reduce the workload on your processor, but now we can activate it and see how it looks. Its values are customized to my taste. It's a clean grain with saturation reduced to 0. It's basically the values set by Sergio Villasano in his Film Vision power grades. Fantastic products, by the way. Then the glow. It is the inbuilt effect inside DaVinci. The values are set in a way that makes it a subtle, realistic effect. If you want it to affect more areas in your image, just decrease the shine threshold, while if you want it to be more intense, increase the gain. You can also add filmic halation. It's the red-orange glowing halo that appears on film stock, specifically around high contrast edges and bright light sources, like lamps, windows, or strongly backlit subjects. To ensure realism, it will only become evident in such parts, if they are present on your footage. Just to show you the effect, we increase the exposure of this image to match. We see that around these edges, it forms naturally. So if you don't see it, it means that probably it would not be there on film stock. This node is not customizable. If you want to customize it and make it extreme, simply go and use the halation effect from the Effects tab. Now back to the LUT folder. Here you can find the RGB ratio, another important key to our look. This is the method that I learned from Kasia Jarko, amazing colorist. This node alters the relationship between red, green and blue. So in this case, I wanted the skin to be brighter, to shine in the scene. While conversely, I wanted the landscape to become denser, darker. To create it, simply add a serial node, then create a layer mixer, set the mixer to composite mode, color, then leave the second serial node untouched. Go to the first node, and under the RGB mixer, set it to monochrome. This way we will only work on luminance again. Then change the values of red, green and blue. Here I'm going dramatic to show you clearly what it does. But now I will get back to my custom values because it's where I like it. The last node to be activated is the denoise, and it's the last one for two reasons. One, it is very intensive as an operation on our processor, and I don't want to make my process slower from the very beginning. Second, because I want to see how much artifacts or noise I introduced after I color graded. Also, before activating it, I want to take the grain off, to see what I'm actually cleaning. By default, it is set in a way that will only remove the color pollution, while maintaining the original grain of your camera, without chroma artifacts. I like it because I think it's more organic. The values that you find should be the best ones for most cameras. Under spatial noise reduction, I intentionally chose faster, not better. I unlink Luma and Chroma and set Chroma to 8, while leaving Luma to 0. If you need further cleaning, you can simply select 3 under Frames in Temporal Noise Reduction. Here, instead, the type should be better, not faster. Under Temporal Threshold, again, you unlink Luma and Chroma and set Chroma to 8, while leaving Luma to 0. Finally, let's put grain back again. I think I would like to also darken the image a bit more, to make it denser. So I will remove halation, which I don't need in this context, and decrease the exposure from the midtones, pushing the skin a bit darker. At the same time, I will increase the lift, just a bit, because I don't want the shadows to be too crushed. I want information to be there. And now the image is where I like it. It's very filmic. There is good color separation, while the look is still very coherent and organic. Now let's go to the free version. It's a simplified node tree that you can build from scratches with available resources inside the software. You can also add any of the other nodes that I explained in the previous part of this tutorial to make it more complex and accurate. To start, let's set our color space transform again. As input color space, choose your camera's brand and profile. As output color space, choose DaVinci White Gamut, and as output gamma, DaVinci Intermediate. Ensure that both tone mapping and gamut mapping are set to none. Also, use white point adaptation should be unchecked. Then let's place another CST, color space transform, in the end of the node tree, this time for the final output. Input color space should be DaVinci Wet Gamut, input gamma should be DaVinci Intermediate. Output color space is Rec 709 and output gamma is Cineon Film Log. This is because we want our footage to become an emulation of the film scan, of what the image would actually look like if it was shot on film. The mapping method this time is DaVinci and gamut mapping is saturation compression. This way we do our best to ensure that values stay within legal ranges. Right after that, you apply the film look, an emulation of what would happen in the lab when printing the scan. You can find it in the native LAT folder under film looks. Select Rec 709 Kodak 2383 D55 because this is the output we are going to go for. If it's cinema projection, it should be DCI P3. The rest of the work mostly is done in between these nodes, in between these transformations. So now let's create a subtractive saturation emulation. If I have to choose one from the previews, I will go with the Cool and Kelly one, the HSV saturation. We select color space, HSV, we deselect the first and the third channel, leaving only the second on, meaning the saturation. Then we work with the gamma and the gain. The gamma affects the least saturated parts of the image, while the gain works on the most saturated ones. So, to make the image more uniform, you will increase the gamma and decrease the gain. In general, the gamma renders more filmic and denser colors, but it's also more prone to artifacts. Then it's time to adjust the white balance and the exposure. I do it in parallel nodes, and you do it by double-clicking and selecting Add Parallel. This way, the modifications don't go on top of each other, but they work simultaneously. So in this case, I just reduce the tint a bit and decrease the gain, while raising the gamma. It means I am decreasing contrast. I often decrease contrast in my images because film look is dense and layered, not stretched. Now, as you can see from our scopes, our toe of the image, the very lowest part, is not clean, meaning there is a strong blue-greenish cast. This is typical of DaVinci Resolve field print emulations, the film looks. They are not balanced in a way that ensures your black point is set to actual clean black. So, what do? We do it ourselves, and we do it by adding a node, this time after the final transformations. We call it black point. From here, we go in the log wheels and we change the individual RGB values under the shadows, the lift. We decrease green and blue until the scopes and the image itself show a clean, neutral black. Now the shadows are cleaner, but they are also too dark, so it's time to go back to the exposure from before the final transformations. I want to reduce the contrast a bit, adjust the midpoint, the pivot, and the distribution is now very nice. I want to also decrease the HSV saturation a bit, and I do it from the gain. Then I think it's time to work on some individual colors, because this look is too vintage for my taste. So, under the color curves, I simply increase the luminance of the skin tones just a bit, while making the green a bit cooler and darker. I did it from the hue versus luminance and the hue versus hue curves, but I could have done it from the color slice as well. Now it's time for sharpening. We will apply sharpening that only affects luminance, not color. We do this by going into color space, selecting Lab CIE, leaving only the first channel active. Then we decrease the radius. Finally, some denoise. My suggestions are to set the values this way, under Spatial Noise Reduction, mode Faster, unlink Luma and Chroma and set Chroma to 8. If you need further cleaning, go under Temporal Noise Reduction, set frames to 3, choose Better, unlink Luma and Chroma, leave Luma to 0 again, and set Chroma to 8 if it's necessary. Otherwise, the Spatial Noise Reduction in most cases will be enough. Finally, the grain. Under the effects, you select the inbuilt film grain, and these are my favorite values. Notice that I am placing grain before the CST and the LUT. This is because I found that grain behaves more realistically if it also undergoes these final transformations. And here we go. We have another way of color grading our footage, this time with available resources inside the software. Enjoy and see you next time.